This hour of broadcasting brought to you by TwoWayRadioCenter.com, a Motorola value-added reseller. Welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. Brought to you by Vigilant Impact. The Church Safety Guys is a nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping the vigilant, those men and women who stand watch, keeping our houses of worship and places of faith safe. We believe church safety and security must be a ministry first and have engaged, servant leaders who continually strive for excellence and teams of motivated volunteers that are always training. Join us for the next hour as the Church Safety Guys unpack safety, security, leadership, and ministry operations with your hosts, Dr. James McGarvey and Mike Scully. This broadcast is also available on YouTube, your favorite podcast platforms, churchsafetyguys.com, and on the original Church Security app. Download it today. Feel free to like, subscribe, and share with your ministry.
Hello and welcome to the Church Safety and Security broadcast with the Church Safety Guys. I am James and I am once again joined by my co-host Mike.
What's up, sir? Long
How's
time
it
no
going?
see.
Yeah, it's been all of 24 hours.
Just about. Yep.
So Mike and I had the opportunity this week to kind of get together and do some work here up in Ohio. And I'm just going to say that I helped him out big time because because he was going to come up to Ohio and he didn't realize that we had literally a 30-degree temperature drop.
No, 50 degree temperature drop in one day. Like I took off from Austin and I landed in Ohio and it was a 50-degree swing.
So basically what happened, and I have to laugh because I'll tell this story real quick. But Mike and I were doing a security assessment for a school in Ohio. And so Mike was flying in. I actually spent the first day, Thursday, there at the school. And then Thursday night, he flew into Ohio and I picked him up. And then we went to work on that project together. And it was just funny because I get down there first thing Thursday morning and I'm reading the temperature gauge on my truck and it says 48 degrees. And so I'm like, I get out and I had not brought a coat or anything substantial. And so I'm like going through my vehicle and I had managed to grab a sports coat. So I threw the sports coat on and I'm like texting Mike and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't say something, he is literally going to go buy a jacket or kill me. Yep. So I text him and I'm like, dude, if you haven't packed yet, you need a sports coat or a winter coat or something.
I definitely packed differently because it was a big change. I mean, and my body is no longer used to New England cold. So it was, put it to you this way, the folks down here in Central Texas don't go swimming below 90 degrees. It was in the high 80s today, and the parking lot at the pool was empty. So
yeah, and actually the next day it was supposed to be Friday, it was supposed to be colder, but it ended up actually being a tiny bit warmer and the sun came out. So it was a great day to be inside, outside. And and we had a lot of it was a very rushed trip. It seems like most of our trips are very rushed, but at the same time, it was fun.
Yeah.
It's always good to get a chance to work together, and we haven't managed to kill each other yet. I say yet because there's always that opportunity, but at the same time, it was fun to collaborate and work together. So
Absolutely. I want to take a moment to mention. I mean, we don't really talk much about it on air. So for folks that are hearing, hey, you were doing an assessment at a school. Yep, that's it's not our first and won't be our last. I mean, we do offer security assessments for places of worship, schools, private schools, etc. So this was a private school that we were engaged to work on and complete assessment from perimeter, interior, interviews of staff, policy review, blueprint review, new project addition review. So there are a lot of different elements of it that we're certainly able to assist with. So if you have a school associated with the church, that is something that we can help you with. The bonus is you can bring us out for an assessment and put together something for your team at the same time.
definitely. And it was interesting because in this particular case, I think, eh, honestly, I think that it was a lot more process oriented than probably some.
Yeah.
But there was at one point in time where we were talking about preparedness and that sort of thing. And we,
I'm waiting. Which story are you about to tell?
yeah,
So
no kidding, right? So, I'll talk about our last interview real quick. So, our last interview was with one of the health assistants there, and kind of like a nurse, individual in a nurse capacity. And so, I asked a few questions, and again, our connecting with doing this, like they expected us, they knew we were going to pop in and ask different people different questions, and so I asked a few questions and presented some scenarios and got an answer that I was kind of expecting. I wasn't expecting anything unique or anything. And we walk out of the office and we're walking down the hallway, and Mike says to me, I literally think your head's going to implode. Like, I'm watching you from a medical sense. You're like smoke coming out of your ears and everything. And I get to the stairs and we're walking down the stairs, and I said, I'm trying really hard to be gracious, but the crazy piece of this is that I actually have more trauma gear and emergency equipment in my truck right now than they do in this situation. And
in the
so
entire school.
in the entire school.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's not to, I don't say that. I say it as, we were laughing, like we were kind of joking around and trying to keep it light and not be aggressive, and be graceful, because they do a fantastic job. The school does, and it's a special school, and we weren't making light of it. It just
Exactly.
We were laughing and joking about the we've we work together and we see stuff like that. Churches ask us to come out and do an assessment, and
well, it's not a billy club. I mean, we're not there to beat them over the head with the fact. I mean, at the end of the day, a finding is a finding. A finding is something we observed and saw, and there could be opportunity around that. It could be a nice to have opportunity. It could be a holy crap, do it today type finding.
Well, and we had the chance to sit down and express some of those concerns, and now we're putting together a report, but it certainly makes for a long weekend. And then next weekend, I am up in New England. We still have tickets available for the workshop in Winchester, New Hampshire, which is at churchsafetyconference.com. So if you're in the New England area and you want to drop in, you're welcome to do that. And after that, I think Sunday I'm also in Martha's Vineyard. So it's going to be a busy weekend for me. And so next weekend we'll probably do a rebroadcast. So we won't have a live episode because it's just, we've got a lot going on, and we're still trying to bounce back from that. But as always, you can reach out to us through our website, which is churchsafetyguys.com. And you're welcome to also reach out to us through our app, which is the Church Security app. or Patreon. We have a Patreon account where you can go and watch past episodes and help support our ministry. And so you're welcome to check that out and reach out to us if we can do anything to help you in your church or your organization. We would love to do that. So this set of broadcasts, we are going to specifically jump into some topics of youth in the church, and also the next 2 or 3 broadcasts that we do live until Thanksgiving, we're going to be talking about kids and youth in the church and that sort of thing. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this so much is because it's the next generation. And so with embracing youth and embracing the next generation, oftentimes, especially smaller churches, individuals that do safety and security overlap in ministry, or oftentimes they'll say, well, if we only had more people, and we've coached. In fact, in my church, we set up a program where some of the teenagers could help serve in safety and security. And so that was a way to engage with some of the youth and bring them in and be involved with them, instead of just looking at them like they're an alien, which I'm sure I've got enough teenagers in my house that I know they act unusual and act weird. But I've been in church situations and settings where individuals were like, oh, those teens are at it again. And, it's just this rickety mentality that they can't do any good and that sort of thing. And so I really want to break through that barrier and also just kind of talk about some of the things that we can do, because safety and security is a ministry that can impact every other ministry within the church. And so how you treat an individual, especially a youth, a teenager, a child, how you interact with them can make all the difference in their life. And we're not just doing this to serve the church and serve the community. We're doing this to serve each other and love each other like Christ would. So with that, our guest on this broadcast is going to be Arthur Woods. And Arthur is a friend of mine that I got to know quite a few years ago, but he makes it his ministry to be involved with teens. So I'm going to bring him in here, and we can get the discussion going. So, hey, Arthur, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to our candlelight session.
Yeah. So I'm actually I'm broadcasting from my Y2K bunker. I have not been out of here in 22 years, so I was hoping you guys could tell me how things are going out there. Did that whole thing take care of itself eventually?
Is this thing on?
Yeah. Testing. I think it kind of resolved itself.
Okay. All right, so I'm free to come out at this point, because I'm just about out of toilet paper.
So that's where it went for COVID.
Yeah.
You had a drop ship to your bunker.
Precisely.
So Arthur, if you would go ahead and just tell our folks like your background and how you kind of got into helping teens out, and what a little bit of info about your ministry.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been working with teens for a couple of decades now, and I absolutely love it. And I enjoy telling the story of how I originally had my first interest in working with teenagers, and it was in the early to mid 90s. I was a teenager myself at the time. I was highly involved in my youth group, and I loved the youth group. And I thought, man, working with teenagers, like being a youth pastor, that's got to be the most fun thing ever. They get to just go to camp all the time and eat pizza and hang out with teens. And so I just assumed if I was enjoying youth group this much, certainly our youth leaders were enjoying it as much as I was. And so that put me on my trajectory of like, yeah, I think I'd really enjoy doing this. And then eventually along the way, as I actually studied, student ministry in college, realized, oh, there's a little bit more to this than just eating pizza and hanging out with my friends. And so anyway, I graduated from Lancaster Bible College with a bachelor's degree in youth ministry, and then a number of years later, graduated with a master's degree in student and family ministry. So it's been a big part of my life. I was a youth pastor at a couple different churches for about 10 years. And then most recently, about 2 years ago, I started a life coaching business for teenagers where I get to just work with teens on either a one-on-one virtual environment or sometimes in a small group setting, and talk to them about developing healthy mindsets, talk to them about limiting beliefs and the lies that they tell themselves, and how they can kind of just crush those lies and start reframing those lies and believing positive, healthy, truthful things about themselves. I help them develop strategic methods for success. So it's really one of those things where it's kind of like, wherever you are as a teenager, my goal is to take you to the next level and to the next level, and have whatever I can do to help you do that. That's what I'm here for.
Awesome.
That's great.
So what we'll jump right into it for sake of time, but I saw you when you were in the background, and I was going on about rickety interaction with youth. You were kind of chuckling.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's
what are your thoughts on that? I'll throw that at you first.
there is this popular sentiment out there that teenagers are scary. I don't want to like interact with teenagers or work with teenagers, be around teenagers. In fact, there was a band a number of years ago. Most of your audience probably has not heard of before, but My Chemical Romance, and I'm gonna give you the G-rated version of their song title, but it was "Teenagers Scare the Living Crap Out of Me." and the song was tongue in cheek. It's a very good funny song, whatever, but that mentality is out there, like, oh, teenagers, they're scary. So I think that is a good place to acknowledge where many people are starting as we engage in a conversation about how to bring them into the volunteership of the church.
For sure.
I think very often it's the lens by which so many look at them, and instead of just seeing them as the group they lay as a label or a stereotype, instead of looking them at as future adults, unprepared adults. In other words, they're not done cooking yet. They're going to have faults. They're going to have things that aren't fully ready yet. So you got to work through that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're not like us guys in our 40s who have reached perfection now. So
hey, now I think I'm done. Where's my fork?
we resemble that remark.
What we're perfection, or the guys in their 40s? 'Cause I'm pretty sure if I brought my wife in, she would not acknowledge the first one.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know how old you guys are, but I'm 45, so I'm right in the middle of the 40s.
Yep, right there with you.
And I'm definitely haven't hit the perfection mark yet. Got a couple more years.
One of our mottos is always training. There's always something we can improve. There's always something we can learn, and becoming complacent is the enemy to this type of business, if you will, to this type of ministry of serving in the church and serving others and serving to protect and create a safe environment. If you get complacent, if you stop learning, you're adding risk.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Lifelong learners. That's what we should all be.
Absolutely.
Cool. So I'll jump right into it. What are some trends that you see with teens, just generally, and their attitude with serving in the church? And, what are your thoughts on that as far as some things that we can do to kind of prompt engagement with them?
Sure. Well, I'm a pretty positive person, so I do like to think on the positive side of life. But But there are concerning trends that we're seeing amongst teenagers and young adults in terms of their involvement with church. Even while they are teenagers and still living at home, they're just kind of disconnect from church, or they're disconnect from youth group. And then we're seeing, once they're kind of released from home, whether they're going to the workforce or they're going to college or whatever the case may be, we're seeing them drop off a lot. Um, Church attendance of young people is unfortunately on the decline. Now, something interesting does happen at some point as they get older. They tend to return to church on some level. Sometimes it's because of a life event, like they had a child, or they got married, or um, they had something negative happen in their life, and they want to return to what they once knew. But in those late teenage, early 20s years, we're seeing a lot of students who not necessarily are turning their back on their faith, although that certainly happens as well, but are turning their back, so to speak, on church attendance.
Yep.
Do you think that's with those trends? Do you think that that's based on COVID, or do you think that COVID has just kind of added fuel to that fire?
Yeah, I think it's a fuel to fire issue. I mean, COVID, I don't think helped church attendance, for a lot of churches.
Sure.
I know a lot of churches are still. In fact, I'll say this: I go to a very large church in Pennsylvania, and the pastor even this week said in his weekly email, "Hey, if you have not come back to church since COVID, now is the time to do it." So I know churches across the country, across the globe, I'm sure, are still saying like, "Hey, guys, come back!" Not just the teenagers, but but the moms and the dads and the adults. So I think COVID did add some fuel to a fire that was already burning. But I think prior to COVID, we already were seeing that a lot of teenagers, and obviously not all teenagers, but a lot of them, when given the opportunity, were choosing not to attend church.
That's, I mean, honestly, that's some of the trends that we're seeing. Like churches aren't back quite yet to the capacity that they were before COVID. So that's why I was just wondering. As someone, it's kind of an interesting topic, but as someone that grew up in a church where anytime the door was open, we were there,
Right,
and
right,
and trying to instill that same value, to our children who are, 21, 18, 16, and 10. I think, thankfully, I think we've been pretty successful. Our kids are all very involved in stuff that goes on, but part of it also has been because we're like, you know what, we're here, so guess what, you're here.
Yep.
And
exactly.
not everybody has that I guess that drive with having folks in church, or having their kids in church, and serving with them too. But we have basically pushed and challenged our kids to be involved and go out beyond their comfort zone and do things and learn, and kind of embrace that environment. But what are some things that you can think of that would encourage or help encourage teenagers to do that?
Yeah, I think there's two primary things that come to mind, and I'm sure there's a lot of other ideas as well. But number one, for teenagers specifically, for them to stay connected to the student ministry, the youth group, and if they feel like they have a place in their student ministry, they have friends there, they have a reason for being there, they're getting something out of it, they enjoy it, whatever it is. If they're feeling connected to that youth group, they're going to want to come back over and over and over again. And I know that as a youth pastor for so many years, you could tell once a student, you started getting a subtle sense that they were starting to be a little disconnected. It didn't take long until they were virtually completely disconnected, and their attendance just kind of fell off the map completely. So I think staying connected to the youth group is a big one. Certainly, this goes back to how my parents raised me. Like you said, James, when the church was open, we were there. I didn't have a choice. That I went to church every Sunday morning, went to youth group every Sunday morning, every Wednesday night. When I was particularly younger, we went to church every Sunday night, and prayer meeting every Wednesday night. So it was, if the church was open, I was there, and my parents encouraged me to attend church, and I did not have an option. But thankfully, I did, for the most part, enjoy church, so that was okay. But the big thing I would say, and I think this probably ties into our discussion today the most, is one of the best ways we can get our teens to stay connected to the church, both while they're a teenager, but then even after they graduate from high school, is volunteership, is to find opportunities and ministries where they can serve, and they can share their gifts, and they can feel like they're providing value to the church body. Suddenly they have a different connection and feel like, I want to keep doing this. I am part of this. I'm part of this community. I'm providing value to this community. So I think volunteership is possibly the biggest way to keep these kids connected.
Absolutely. And I think that's it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, is in the sense that these are future adults. So why would we treat the teens so much
Yeah,
differently than we treat adults? We know that
yeah,
their way of being engaged and and connected is plugging in and finding something that they can have an impact, where they can bring value and be valued at the same time. So if you add the teenage component, they want to feel like they're valued, and that their time that is invested is even more important than the average adult. I mean, we'll work week in and week out, and it's nice to have every once in a while, hey, appreciate you, or hey, good job. But the teens are really craving that words of affirmation, the acknowledgement
yeah,
of, hey, I'm being seen, and I'm not just being seen, I'm being seen as helpful.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
I think it's interesting that to that point, Mike, we as parents, a lot of times we don't always make that connection. Like, we don't always think that, like I want to say more regularly than not, but I haven't always looked at it from the aspect of, do my kids enjoy what they're serving at? Are they connected? I've just looked at it like, hey, find something to serve in, because we're serving, and because, I grew up volunteering in whatever I could, like whether it was working for the Red Cross or the fire department, or just trying to contribute back to the community and give back to help others. But from a church aspect, oftentimes, like for our church, we um, we built a program basically with our safety team to be able to go and pull in those folks that were teenagers and try and disciple and mentor them. And was it 100% foolproof? No, it wasn't. But it also gave several individuals that were interested in serving, now continue to serve. So it allowed us to connect with those folks. But it also, from a safety and security aspect, it gave them an opportunity to develop skills as they went forward. And actually, several of them went on to get into law enforcement and public safety, just because they were like, hey, I'm passionate about this. This is really interesting to me. So in a sense, our church, we really, it's a larger church in Central Ohio, and we run that that ministry, the safety and security ministry, as though it is a public safety entity, because, we have on any Sunday, I think we have 800 to 900 people. So in the rural New England area I grew up in, that's pretty much a town. So,
Yep.
but the reality is that, was it awkward at first? Absolutely, because we didn't know, like, we had an idea for discipleship and a vision for, let's connect with this group of people that no one's tapping into for ministry. Like, it's like, if you were a teen, the only way that you could serve was in the nursery or teaching Sunday school. And so we were, when I approached the youth minister with the idea, I'm just thankful that he didn't look at me like I was crazy. Several parents did, like, what in the world are you doing? But he was very much, I like where you're going, and I like the fact that your ministry is looking at discipleship and long term, being beneficial to those folks. So
Yeah, I love that.
But what's also interesting to me from my kids' aspect is that when I've talked to them in the past about doing things and serving, they they understand the importance. They've jumped in and done different things, and now I think my oldest, I mentioned, was 21. She's off on her own, and I had actually had someone at the new church. I mean, she's on the West Coast, but the new church that she attends is the church that my wife and I got married in. And so one of the individuals reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, your daughter is an amazing blessing and example, because she's directing Sunday school. She's doing this. She's helping." And we didn't ask her to. All we said was, "Hey, wherever you go, find a local church. Here's some suggestions to check out, but, get plugged in, meet people, and contribute to community and service." And she took it and ran with it, and it was kind of nice to hear folks contact us and say, "Hey, you did a good job raising that kid." So
Yeah. Well, I like that. I like that phrase, contribute to community. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. Like, I think that's a very good way to look at it. It's, yes, if you serve, it's probably going to make you feel good. You'll get something out of it. You'll feel affirmed. So yeah, there are self reasons in a sense that someone might serve, but ultimately you're contributing to the community. And whether you're doing that in a church safety ministry or the nursery or the youth group, or you're an usher, whatever the case is, you're contributing to, in the case of this conversation, our church community. And James, you had mentioned the big word a few moments ago, and that's awkward. It is awkward when you have an adult who's trying to interact with a teenager, and the teenager feels the awkwardness, the adult feels the awkwardness. It feels like an odd exchange, and so when we're talking about, well, how do we bring teenagers into our different ministries? How do we get them on our church security team or whatever ministry we're talking about? Some of it is we have to just fight through some of the awkward and hope and pray that they're willing to fight through some of the awkward as well. One of the coaching clients that I had, that was something that we had to work on with him, was his communication with adults, his eye contact, his ability to speak with them in person, even written communication, because it was just so awkward. And that's something we see with, unfortunately, a lot of teenagers. I love teenagers. If there's teenagers listening, I love you, but I do got to tell you, sometimes you're not always great about communicating with adults. Now, sometimes us adults aren't great at communicating with teenagers, so it is a two-way street. But we kind of need to fight through that awkwardness to be able to get these teens on our ministry teams.
For sure. Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think from an awkwardness perspective, it's getting out of our own head sometimes as the adult. Certainly, they may feel just as awkward because they're like, I'm just a teenager. This adult is they are in their ministry. They're doing this. They feel sometimes inferior, or that I can't wear those shoes, or I can't live up to that expectation, or I'm going to be judged, or either as a stereotype or judged because I can't possibly do that yet because no
Sure.
one's ever showed me how. So I think the idea of giving them an opportunity is the key there. And we look at it all the time with older teens. We're constantly encouraging them into internships and get that first job to build those early skills. But yet we don't seem to do that very well in the church. We're not actually saying, how can we equip these future ministry leaders by starting not just as an internship per se, but because there are some of those for folks that want to go into staff roles, but really looking at saying is, how do we help them and how can they help in any possible way? Because and to your point, James, it doesn't have to be only certain positions. It can be any team. You could truly have them come in with perhaps scaled back certain roles, yes, but there are things and ways you can find for teenagers to help.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
100%.
And that was one of the things, like for the first set of teenagers that were interested when we reached out to them, the youth pastor actually gave me the opportunity one Sunday morning to come and speak to the youth group before
Right.
Sunday school. And he was like, "Hey, here you go." And I'm like, he grabbed me on spur of the moment. He's like, "Hey, do you have a second?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but service is about to start." And he's like, "No, come here." And so I walk in and he's like, "Okay, go for it. You got," and he's like looking at his watch and I'm like, "Go for what?" And he's like, "You got 5 minutes. They're all yours." And, so I get up there and of course I don't, believe it or not, I'm not crazy about public speaking anyway. And so here I step up on the stage and, there's probably about 60 teenagers that are just like staring at me like, who's this jerk? And so it made me just as nervous. And I just said, look, here's a new ministry opportunity. We're looking for you guys that might be interested in helping. And, here we go. Here's an opportunity. Now, obviously there are certain things over the years that we've dealt with that and that's one of the things when I approached, like I had a handful of teenagers come up to me. I said, okay, I want to sit down with you and your parents. I want to lay out, the expectation of ministry and service, and we can talk about this. And so when I did that, the parents had some concerns. They're like, well, you protect from a safety and security aspect, you protect life and, within the church. And how are you going to handle this if, you get into a situation that's life and death and my son or daughter is there? And that's, for safety and security, that was a valid concern. And I just explained to them, look, this is what our design is to kind of put them through in a mentorship type way. So we're not going to send them off to be by themselves. We are with them. And there are certain things where I would certainly say, you know what, you need to hang out here in the office. I'm going to respond to this with so-and-so, but you have to put those parameters in to be able to say, you know what, this type of situation probably isn't the best situation for you to be in. But, I can honestly remember rewinding back to when I was in middle school and high school. I had a crazy infatuation with the fire department because of things that happened to me in my life. And I would have killed for the opportunity to just be part of something bigger if churches had safety and security ministries back then, which they didn't because it was so long ago. But at the same time, it would have been awesome to me to contribute back in that way, because I feel like that's an area where God has put it in my heart to serve in and be passionate about that. So to me, that's kind of like connecting the dots. So, fast forward back to our church implementing that idea and serving for teenagers. And I felt like, you know what, if somebody had done this with me when I was that age, it would have, given me an amazing opportunity. So I want to try and do that for other teenagers and give them the opportunity to connect with purpose and meaning. But again, I mean, it really just depends on the situation. Now, to connect it back to some of the smaller churches, I know there will be individuals that listen to us. We'll probably get a whole bunch of great emails saying how wrong we are and and everything else. But the truth is, regardless of if you have enough people serving or not, because that's one of the other things we always get questions on, like, hey, how do we get more people to jump in and volunteer and serve in this ministry and in this capacity? And it's like, you know what? Here's the thing. We're supposed to be in safety and security, or any ministry. We're supposed to be discipling, and we're supposed to be mentoring those around us and pouring into their lives. And so if we can do that with a younger generation, then you know what, maybe we can make a difference as that safety ministry, and maybe we can encourage the next generation to come and contribute and serve, because we're connecting with them and they're connecting with, that purpose to be efficient and effective. I don't know.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree 100%, James, because it's, most of these ministries and churches, we're not talking about, hey, here's a teenager who's volunteering. All right, teenager, go do that. We're in most of the ministries, we're talking about they're going to be working closely with a responsible adult who is going to kind of take the reins on things. And certainly in a church safety context, you would assume that that's going to be very much led by responsible adults. And then the teenagers get to not only serve, but they almost come into that mentorship or discipleship relationship with those responsible adults. And so now you no longer just have the youth pastor or the youth leaders pouring into kids. You actually have, oh, look at this, the church safety team is pouring into kids from the youth group or from the church. And so there's a lot of potential there just for those one-on-one mentorship and discipleship relationships, just by adults working with kids within the church. So I love that.
And what's amazing is that not every person on our teams tend to have the opportunity to serve in a teacher capacity per se. They may share what they know, but oftentimes it's very, the culture in safety and security teams tends to be either an external trainer that's brought in periodically to do certain trainings, or it's the team leader that's actually, or director or whatever, that's doing the training. When you're given an opportunity to mentor either another person, or in this case, a teenager that you're giving an opportunity to serve, you learn the material twice as well when you teach it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's the big part. So I think the idea is you can have a more solid team because you're allowing them to mentor someone else and pass on that knowledge. The other value is truly understanding what each of your team members brings to the table and realizing, hey, you have a collection of different tools in your toolkit. Use the right tool for the right job and realize, hey, that tool is going to mentor that next tool for the next generation. And so I think that's one of those areas where you could take advantage of investing in the maturity of your team by reaching down a rung on the ladder.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, let's face it here, we're not talking about, hey, listen to this podcast and then on Sunday morning get up on stage and make an announcement inviting the kids to serve, the teams to serve, and then boom, you're off to the races. It's all done. I think what we're really talking about here is develop a culture of volunteerism with teenagers amongst the church. So it almost becomes the norm that if you're a teen and you go to our church, you're going to serve in some capacity. You're going to serve on the church safety team, or you're going to serve in the nursery. You're going to be an usher. Or you're going to be in Kidmin, whatever it is. And that takes time. So if you do attend a church right now, that's not really part of the DNA of the church, the culture of the church, that's not to say that it can't become that, but it does take time. And I've had experience with that as a youth pastor where we've had these exact conversations like, okay, how do we make service an even bigger part of the life of the teenagers that are in our youth group? And it takes time, it takes dedication, but it can happen. The kids enjoy serving. They love serving. They want to serve, even if they don't know that they want to serve yet. It's kind of, in a sense, up to the adults of the church to give them those opportunities and say, hey, there's so many places you can serve within the church. What would you love to do? And then try to provide that for them.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. It's an interesting point that you make about creating that culture of, volunteering and being involved. And you're absolutely right. It's not something that happens overnight. It takes time. It takes planting the seeds. It takes watering, and being influential. And I think it's interesting that from a certain aspect of it, I can tell you that, I think it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was teaching a CPR and first aid class, and I was actually doing that for the nursery folks. And some of those individuals were teenagers at that time, were in middle school or older. And what was crazy is those individuals, and I still remember the class to this day. I mean, it was 6 or 7 years ago, but those individuals appreciated the fact that I treated them just as important in that class as
Yeah.
all the adults. And what's crazy about that is some of those individuals now are obviously are adults on their own themselves. And, some of them are my kids' friends, and, they'll hang out or do whatever, or maybe they're in the college program or whatnot. But the truth is that every time I see them now, they go out of their way to connect back with me and say, hey, Mr. McGarvey, or hey, Dr. McGarvey, or whatever, teasing me or whatever. But the truth is that, they still remember that. And because I didn't downplay the importance of, hey, what can I do? I'm just a kid. Well, you're a kid, but you're serving. And you know what? There's still ways that you can be beneficial and contribute in a positive way. So, why wouldn't I treat you like, anybody else? I should, that should be like, I should be, as a believer and a leader in the church, I should be trying to set that example of discipleship and engagement to, to interact with those, whether it's awkward or not. And sometimes it is, but at the same time, now looking back, I'm glad that I did that, because, they know, and there's a certain level, I think there's a certain level of value that we can add to them in helping them see and understand that they have value through ministry and through the love of Jesus. In that situation, they are valuable. And if they aren't getting that from the church, then they're going to look for some other place to get it. Like if they're not finding value and purpose, then at the church, then they're going to look for other methods that they can be confirmed in that. So.
Yeah. And you're right. And on the flip side of that, we as adults have to recognize that they genuinely do have value. So we're not even talking about like, well, let's pretend they have value. Let's be nice. Let's stroke their egos. Let's make them feel affirmed, just so we can get some warm bodies and hit our quota for for volunteers. But rather to recognize like, no, actually they do have tremendous value. Part of my time as a youth pastor, I was a junior high youth pastor, and many of my volunteers were high school students volunteering in my junior high student ministry. And that was invaluable. Now, yes, I also had a very good structure of adult volunteers, but we had tons of high school students who were volunteering in junior high, and it was great. And it wasn't a novelty like, oh, isn't that cute? He's helping in junior high. Like, no, he or she was providing legitimate value to the ministry and to the junior high students that were receiving that value.
And that's funny that you say that, because we had the same thing. Like after after we started our ministry and had teens come in, there were adults that were like, "Oh, you guys have teens helping. That's amazing, Pat Pat." It's like
Exactly.
that's great
How
for
cute.
you. And I'm like, I think one time one of the guys just kind of looked at me, and the adult, the person saying that walked away, and he looked at me and he's like, and I'm still friends with him, and he's married and has a kid now, but he's like, that was patronizing, and he just said it in such a low tone that I started laughing, because I'm like, you're not wrong, like I don't know what to
It
say.
it goes back thousands of years. Don't let anyone look down on you because you were young. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
uh, sometimes people are looked down upon because they're young, and we can't go into this discussion with that attitude, and we can't come out of this discussion with that attitude.
Well, and that's, with that, I definitely, for sake of time, we need to wrap up, but I do want to jump back to your point of that, because, Paul, the apostle Paul in the New Testament was very specific with Timothy that you're absolutely right, that, age should not be an issue, and that if someone was willing to serve, and if God put them in the role, that they should be able to serve and disciple to serve. So, really, we should really be all of us looking at this from a whole, ministry aspect, like you said earlier, Arthur, not just church safety and security, although that's what we talk about, and we kind of live, breathe, and digest on Sunday on Sunday mornings, and everything else. But the reality is, it is a culture, it is embracing, you know um, treating others like we would want to be treated, and understanding that, those folks do have value. So I'll throw it over to you, Mike, and if you want to go ahead and wrap it up. And
Sure. One kind of one more thought, kind of a series of things I feel like teens are really looking for. It's a generational difference, but it's also they're looking for authenticity, I think, is one of the main things right off the bat. But they're also seeking recognition. They're seeking resources. I mean, Arthur, you're a coach, so helping folks out, helping teens out, they're seeking that, seeking you out as a
Yeah.
resource, because they're acknowledging and they're reflecting on themselves that they need something else, they need something more, they want to improve. So they're kind of self-reflecting and doing that. So they're seeking feedback. The folks that go to coaches want that feedback, they want that guidance and help, but they're also tend to be folks that are looking for flexibility. So we have to acknowledge that, and if we're going to hold them into a rigid position or only give them opportunity that has two guardrails on it and say this is the only way that you can serve, my way or the
Yeah.
highway, guess what, they're not going to serve. But if we give them
Exactly.
flexibility and say, how can we help you serve, they will. And one last thought there would be is how can we potentially sow into ministry the opportunity for these kids to be competitive, because they want contrast, they want to be able to see pros, cons, highs, lows, negatives, etc. If they don't see the contrast, they're not learning. They need to understand so that they can keep negotiating the world that they're in.
And I think, honestly, too, and I'll throw in there, they want to see authenticity,
Yeah.
right? They want to see adults. If adults are saying, "Hey, why aren't you serving? Why aren't you treating people like this?" They want to see, you know, they want to see you doing that. If you're pushing them to serve and treat other people with value, then they want to know that, hey, you're practicing. I mean, I know my kids do. They want to know that I'm practicing what I'm preaching to them. So,
Yeah.
100%.
for sure.
Yeah.
So, for those of you at home that are listening, or at a later time, I did post Arthur's website on there, but it's arthurcwoods.com. And Arthur's got some great resources on his website. So if you are interested in following up with him, you can do that through his website. And thank you so much again, sir, for joining us tonight. It's been great to have you.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation. I did want to say to anyone who's interested, on October 27th, I am doing a free webinar for parents of teenagers, and you can get the information and register free at arthurcwoods.com. But it's all about how do we communicate with our teenagers when they don't want to be talked to. And so I feel like it fits in pretty well with what we've been talking about tonight,
absolutely.
Where you're talking to your teen and they're just the hands up saying, not today. Not how do we engage in those conversations. So if you're interested, sign up for free October 27th, arthurcwoods.com.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you. Thanks for mentioning that, because I had seen that and forgot about it. So it's definitely something that I will probably check out, because I think I
can use it with my 8-year-old.
maybe
Could be.
your 8-year-old that's going on 16.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Thanks,
Well,
Arthur.
again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
All right. So just wrapping up real quick, I just wanted to mention again that this coming weekend we'll be up in Winchester, New Hampshire. We'll be doing a conference there, and you can get more information at churchsafetyconference.com. And as always, you can reach out to us through our website at churchsafetyguys.com, or you can reach out to us through our church security app that's downloadable from the iOS and Google Play stores. And then also through Patreon, which is patreon.com/churchsafetyguys. And you can go in there, and there's different ways to support our ministry if God puts it on your heart to do that. And you can also go back and see previous episodes that we've done over the last couple of years. So this is episode 142. So we're coming up on the big 150. And I think we're supposed to hit that sometime in December, but this is season 9. So as always, if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover or go over, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to bring that on. And we appreciate you listening. So until next time, we'll say take care, God bless, and have a great week.
This hour of broadcasting brought to you by TwoWayRadioCenter.com, a Motorola value-added reseller. Thank you for joining the Church Safety Guys broadcast, brought to you by Vigilant Impact. We hope that you found it informative, and we appreciate your feedback and interaction. Be sure to share our broadcast with your teams, join the discussion online, and connect with us on social media. For other great ministry resources, download the Church Security app or at our website at churchsafetyguys.com. Remember, keep a servant's heart, a mindset of ministry, and semper disciplina. Always be training. Have a blessed week.